Well, hi everyone. We're about to go ahead and get started. I'm glad to see everyone joining today. Hopefully everyone had a good holiday, good MLK Day. And then if you're in the DC area, hopefully you stayed out of the snow and out of the weather. Um, I came back to snow and ice, but all is well. Today, Will's going to be basically going over the questions, frequently asked questions that we often get regarding retirement. Will, if you don't already know, started Fed Legacy about 13 years ago now. We've helped thousands of federal employees. He's a wealth management advisor. He's an entrepreneur. He's a steward of the community. And I like to think of him more of a colleague or as a friend. So without further ado, I'm introducing William Smith.
All right, thanks, Mike, man. Appreciate you, man. Happy New Year, everybody. Happy to be here. We decided to do this 2024 Q&A, right? Because TSP has had a lot of new updates that we want to, well, not a lot, but it's a couple updates that we want to be able to share with you all as a team. And then we also, we also want to just answer a lot of questions that people might have, right? We get a lot of emails daily. We get a lot of Facebook messages, comments, variety of different things daily. It might mute your computer. We want to be able to, we get a lot of these questions daily. And today we want to take time to answer those questions for you and also introduce some new concepts, right? And so what we're going to do first is I'm gonna share my screen. We're going to go through our PDF. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run through that, right? And if you have any questions, make sure you save them for the end because we're gonna open up the floor for Q&A, and it could be any and everything that you have that you want to bring to the table and learn about, right? So just get ready. We're gonna bring you the information, and I'm just happy for you to be here. So let me share my screen really quick. Where's everybody from? Is anybody from DC in here? Atlanta. Those are our places that we get the most clients. DC, Atlanta, Houston. Philly, we get a lot of Philly people, Norfolk area type. But let me share my screen real here. What's up, RC? How you doing, man? All right. Can y'all see my screen? Can y'all see it? If y'all can see it, give me a thumbs up. Mike, can you see it? You can see it? Okay, cool. So we're going to talk about is your TSP enough, right? Not going to go into who I am and all that type of stuff because you already know who I am. But first, I want to talk about these 3 changes. And mind y'all, I am not a big time slide maker, right? So don't judge the quality of my slides, right? I'm here to present information, right? And so what we got here is that these are the 2024 TSP changes that are relevant, right? And so one is the RMD calculation for Roth TSP, right? Now, this only is pertinent to somebody who's retired and getting ready to start being forced to take RMDs, right? And so before this year, the TSP would calculate your entire TSP balance towards your RMD calculation. So let's say, for example, you have $500,000 between your traditional and your Roth TSP, right? Before 2024, all of that will be considered in the percentage you got to withdraw on as far as RMDs is considered. This year, that has been updated, right? And this is in alignment with most IRAs, right? Now, if you have 250 in traditional and 250 in Roth, only the traditional number is going to be used to go into that calculation for your RMDs, right? So again, this is for somebody that's right close to retirement. Not close, but close to taking the RMDs or already taking the RMDs. This is relevant to you. For those that have not at that place yet, this just gives you an idea of what you need to think about when it comes to your traditional TSP, right? Because with your traditional TSP, let's say you have $500,000 in your TSP when you retire and you don't touch it, right? That TSP is going to continue to grow. And the more it grows, the higher. And let's say it goes from 500 to 900,000, right? Just throwing a number out there. You're going to have to pay, and at this time it's 28%. You're going to pay 28% of that money in RMDs when it comes time, right? That's the number they use. Now, what you want to do is what's called a Roth conversion, right? And we can get more into that when we talk one-on-one. But like what you want to do is you have 500,000 in your TSP, traditional TSP. You want to start converting a lot of that money over to the Roth TSP so that when it comes time for you to take your RMDs, your number is no longer 900,000. It's a lower number. Let's say 500 or 400 because you kept converting down. So you want to be able to convert as much money as possible within your tax bracket over into the Roth TSP or some type of Roth account so that you don't have a big traditional RMD number, right? And so that's in the future for y'all that are not at that age, how that first bullet relates to you. The next thing is the 10% withdrawal exemption, right? And so this is another new change, right? And this is for people who are retiring before 59 and a half, right? So as of last year, if you would retire at 59 and a half, but didn't have your 30 years, you would be subject to the 10% withdrawal penalty when you take money out, right? And so now, as long, it doesn't matter how many years you're in the government, if you have a sum of money within your TSP, right? Let's say you have 200,000 in your TSP, you only worked in the government for 10 years, say, and you're leaving at 57, right? Now, as long as you have a income payment set up, now you can avoid that 10% withdrawal penalty, but it has to be a sequential withdrawal setup. That allows you to withdraw that 10% withdrawal penalty. So if you're retired from the government before 59 and a half, doesn't quite have your 30 years left, you can waive that 10% withdrawal as long as you're taking income payments out, right? And so that's significant, right? And you can also do a rollover as long as you're still taking those income payments out. That's point number 2. And then number 3, when it comes to the TSP increase in contributions, the catch-up amount stayed the same at the 7,500, but for those that are below 50, and you can still add this 500 if you're above 50, but the catch-up amount stayed the same, but the amount that you could put into your TSP went up by $500 overall. Typically they do both, right? Typically it's 500 and 500. This year, 500 on catch-up, 500 on the normal contribution limits. But this year, only the normal contribution limits went up by 500. So the catch-up stayed the same. So it's not an extra $1,000 in income increase. So those are the 3 TSP updates for 2024 that I think are important. And so with that being said, I'm gonna go on to the next thing, right? And we could talk about it at the end. Hold your questions to the end, or put your questions in the chat. And Mike, if you could check the chat to make sure that people are asking, if they're asking questions, just make sure we get them all logged in so we have them. All right. So again, I got my 3 keys, right? I'd like to keep the threes in three buckets, right? And I always start with mindset, right? I know a lot of you all said on a lot of my calls before, but I always got to start with mindset, because if you don't have the proper mind for learning, we're wasting time, right? And I don't want to waste time, right? So I just want to go over how to have the proper mindset, because I know for me, when I'm doing different things, I always have to remind myself I want to be growth minded in this moment, right? Because if I'm not growth minded, meaning glass half empty, right, then I might miss out on things because I'm thinking too much about myself. I'm being too much of a skeptic, and it's all because of my own personal, I might be unsure about information, right? And so I just always want to put myself in a position where I'm able to learn, right? So let's go over some of those key aspects of what that looks like, right? And so when it comes to getting your mind right, on every call, it's 3 types of people. Either you're a skeptic, you listen, but you sabotage yourself because you might say, oh, yeah, I know I need to do this, but you never end up doing it. And so you just keep delaying until you hit with an emergency, and then you have to act, right? And then once you get smacked with an emergency, you then become fed up, right? And that's the next type of person that's probably on this call. You've been putting off your retirement for a lot of years. And so you're at this point now, you're just like, you know what? I got to do something. So whatever Mr. Smith, Mr. Burns, and anybody else on our team that's on this call that says, I got to do something now. You're that person. So it's time for you to take action, and you're ready, right? But before, the reason why you delayed because you were skeptic about so much. Then there's the people like I like to call already rich, and these people, they show up for seminars no matter what. Like my guy RC. RC shows up for everything, right? And RC, and his wife Gabriella, like they always are seeking information. They're information seekers, right? And because they're information seekers, they're always going to have the edge in life because they're always adding to their pie, right? Even if they know 99% of the information that's presented, 1 little percent extra is a big deal to them because they always want to stay ahead. So you could be that person on the call as well, right? You just want to always learn information. So I encourage you to just listen with a keen ear, ask questions at the end that you might not have information on, and you come and get the answers that you deserve, right? And so, and the reason why these 3 mindsets are important is because at the end of the day, we all want to be that person that lives life on our own terms, right? We want to be that person on the cruise ship looking over the ocean and just enjoying life, right? Because that's why we work, right? That should be anyway, right? To one day retire and, have the peace of mind that you deserve, right? And so, and here's some of the thoughts, right? That if you're thinking any of these thoughts, and these are just common complaints that we hear, right? It's too late for me to start saving. Like we get these comments on our Facebook posts and stuff like that we have, and we get thousands of posts a week. We get thousands of comments, man. Like you should see these posts. And so, on our Facebook page, right? And so it's like it's too late for me to start saving. No one ever taught me how to save and invest. All these things can be valid, but they can be overcome with a growth mindset, right? Yeah, it might be too late, but it's never too late to start, right? I've seen people, have 5 years left of retirement. They get serious and you learn things along the way. I had this one lady, I met her. She was 60, exactly 60. And she just had no idea what to do, right? I came in her office. She was like, well, you just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And so we put her TSP at 15%. We let it ride. 7 years later, she had a couple $100,000 in her TSP. She had a heart attack, right? But we set up her TSP. We set up her annuities. We set up her, and some of the annuities that we have had a long-term care rider on it. And so because we set up our life insurance policy. And because we did that, when she had this heart attack, had to have this open heart surgery and couldn't work, she was able to activate those things we put in place. And she was able to retire. She was able to retire a year later with peace of mind, but she didn't work for a whole year, right? But if it wasn't for the stuff that we put in place, there's no way she would have been able to, one, have peace of mind. So who knows what would have happened with all that stress, right? Because her family called. I said, well, yeah, she's good. She doesn't have to go back to work. She could take as long as she needs to off. Financially, she's okay. But it was all because of that conversation. But she started planning when she was 60, right? And so, again, it's never too late to start planning. All right. And so the next thing I want to go to is set a goal, right? Set it and forget it, right? This is a concept that I was reading a book. It's called The Psychology of Money. And it talks about like real wealth, like from a employee stand. I mean, I'm not talking about like Bill Gates wealth or nothing like that. Like that's a whole different type of wealth. But I'm talking about people that work and build wealth from a job, right? Like most of you, right? One of the best things you could do is just set it and forget it, right? Put a plan in motion, put a certain amount aside, and let it ride. And then keep tweaking it every year, like adding a percentage here, maybe, and that's really it, right? Until you get down to the next, right before you need to retire, then you can make some fun, meaning like the TSP fund adjustments. But the best thing you could do, set a decent amount of what you want to put towards your TSP, add to it every year, and that's it. Like just let it ride, right? And so while that's important, she's forgetting. Remember, I told you I'm not the best with the slides, but she's supposed to be forgetful in this slide, right? And so the reason why that's important is because of a concept called dollar cost averaging, right? And what dollar cost averaging is, matter of fact, has anybody heard this? If you've heard this, put 1 in the chat. If you heard a dollar cost averaging, put 1 in the chat. If you haven't, put 2 in the chat. I want to see who's heard of dollar cost averaging before. Anybody heard of dollar cost averaging? Let me see. Make sure y'all engage. 1 if you heard of it, 2 if you haven't. I don't see nobody updating this. Am I tripping? All right, Sheena hadn't heard of it. Nesh hasn't heard of it. Jay heard of it. Of course, Jay heard of it. Money Making Jay. Catalina. Okay. All right, cool. So here's what dollar cost averaging is. It's every pay period, right? And when as it relates to you, every pay period, you're buying shares in your TSP, right? So whether the market's up, you buy, whether the market is down, you're buying, right? And so what that means is it's just a consistent drip of buying shares, right? And so what that does is as the markets grow up, right? And I'm going to show you, as long as you're doing that, you're able to take advantage of the long-term growth. Again, as long as you set it and forget it, right? So let's say you're a CNS type of person, and that's where you put your money at, right? If you look at the long term, the T and the S, C and the S are at 12% and 8%, right? Let's say you're a person that put, you set it and forget it, but you left your money in the G fund. You're only getting 2%, right? Either way, you forgot it, you did it. You rather get 12, or you rather get 8. Again, long term, right? Anything like me, I want 12%. You know what I'm saying? And so, but again, you just have to think long term, right? And so, again, going back to dollar cost averaging, here's what it looks like, right? Back at this, and this is the C fund, right? In January, if you got paid last week, you would have bought these TSP C fund shares at $74 a share, right? Back in March 2023, say you got paid on that Friday, you would have bought, let's say, $100 worth, 100 shares at $60 a share, right? You didn't care. You couldn't control which point you bought the share because of dollar cost averaging. So every time you got paid, you're just buying. You're buying if it's worth 60. You're buying if it's worth 74. You're buying if it goes down to 58. And so you're having all these shares in your TSP account, which is what you have. And over time, the ones you buy when the market is low, those are going to continue to go up, right? The ones you bought when the market is high, they hold their value, and so on, right? And so what you want to do is you get to really take advantage of this when you have a set it and forget it mentality, right? If you're the type of person who, if you hear something going on, you're switching all your money to the G fund, right? Then all of a sudden you say, okay, things are going great. I'm going to switch my money back to the C fund. You're really messing up the formula when it comes to the dollar cost averaging because you don't really know when the market's going to go back up or when it's going to go back down. So you just got to trust the process of dollar cost averaging, because what ends up happening, you get shares that are worth a little, shares that are worth a lot, and that balances everything out, right? Okay. And so if you want to build wealth, you got to have a set it and forget it mentality. Otherwise you can screw things up, right? And so the reason why the C fund also is why I'm talking about the C fund a lot here is because how many of y'all recognize any of these companies on here? Or how many of y'all interacted today alone with at least two of these companies on here? Like use the PC computer, talk to your iPhone, bought something from Amazon, or use Google. How many of y'all at least use two of these companies today? Matter of fact, 3 of these companies today. How many of y'all have used 3? How many of y'all, anybody? Use 3. iPhone, you use a PC, bought something on Amazon, or use a Google Chrome bar, or use a Chase banking account, right? How many of y'all use Johnson & Johnson lotion, right? These companies, right? They comprise what the C fund is, right? So when you have your money in the C fund, which is the S&P 500 index fund, this is what you're investing in, right? And so why wouldn't you invest in stuff that majority of this chat has interacted with at least 3 or 4 of these every single day, right? And so this is why you want to make sure you have your money in the right funds. And so going back to the last thing, right? The last key, which is protect the money you make, right? So once you make the money from setting and forgetting it, you want to make sure you protect it, right? And this is more so for those that are getting ready to retire, right? And so as Mike mentioned earlier, we've been doing this now for 13 years, right? And so, we've seen a lot of clients build wealth and retire, right? The last time we did this call, we had Laura on. When Laura started with us, that was 12 years ago. She was 45 years old. She's 57 now, right? And she was telling her story on here. And Laura lives on a couple of acres out in North Carolina. And when we first met her, she was just doing what most people do is just 5% in her TSP, but not really having no strategy, right? And so over the next 12 years, we really built a full strategy out for Laura, right? To the point now, like I said, Laura lives on a couple acres. She's living a good life, and she's 57 years old, right? And the way in which we were able to do that with her, and even more so once she retired, was we built out her financial house. And even like the lady I mentioned earlier, who we helped when she was 60, we did something similar to her. And the reason why she was able to, when she had the heart attack, it was easy for her to not have to come back to work because we put some money in her foundation bucket. And that foundation bucket helped with that long-term care illness that she had and allow her not to have to come back to work because we already had that money. We already had that money put away, and her TSP money was just still allowed to grow. She didn't have to panic. There was already a plan in place. And so it was like, it goes by like this, right? So we have that foundation, that's your protection money, that's your legacy money, that's your long-term care money, right? Then we have your walls, right? Your walls is your insulation, right? Now, when it comes to the insulation, you're going to pay, you're going to pay taxes, right? You can't avoid it. Some people might come to you and tell you can, but you can't, right? And then you can reduce it, like we mentioned earlier, but you can't avoid it. And then you have your inflation, right? Inflation, you have to prepare for that, right? Inflation was at 3.27%, I think, over the last 100 years, whereas the G fund, where a lot of people run to for safety, is only returning 2%, right? So if you're going to have some level of protection, you got to make sure it's at least getting you on average more than 3.27% per year, or you're losing buying power, right? So you want to make sure you're in that 4 to 5% range for money that you want to keep safe, right? And so that's one of the strategies we help with. And then you also want to be taking the appropriate amount of risk, right? You don't want to be taking too much risk. You want to be taking too little risk. And more so than anything, you don't want to be taking too little risk, right? Because as we saw earlier with the C fund and the companies that we're using, the companies that we use on a daily basis, you want to be invested in those companies for the rest of your life so you can ride that wave. And the good thing about the C fund, the S&P 500 stocks, let's say Amazon and Apple and all these companies go out of business and some new thing comes up, like this Chat GPT phones or whatever, right? All the S&P 500 index funds going to do is they're going to start investing in OpenAI or whatever the name of the company is for Chat GPT or any new company that comes on. They're just going to replace those stocks with new ones, and you don't have to do nothing about that. The S&P index takes care of that for you, right? So you want to be able to think long term and have the right amount of money in those accounts so you can reap that benefit, right? And so I won't go into these a little bit because I did it already, but this is that foundation. Taking it back to the lady, she had a heart attack. Her financial house could have been ruined, but her foundation, because she didn't have any more income, right? But because we built a strong foundation, it allowed her to not have stress, allow her not to have to quit her job. She still was able to take income until her leave ran out, but we were able to still help her financially because with the long-term care stuff, because of the annuities that we put in place for her, right? So that was beneficial, right? And so again, insulation, protection from inflation and taxes. You can't avoid paying taxes, but you could definitely reduce the amounts you pay by doing raw conversions, right? So you can definitely do that. And then when it comes to inflation, you can have a strategy that allows your protected money to outgrow what inflation is, right? And then again, that goes, IRS question, you can't avoid paying taxes, and then this roof part. The reason why we show a roof that has some damage on it is because, a roof is the top of the house, right? It has the most exposure. Stocks have the most exposure, right? And there are going to be years like last year where you're going to lose 20%, right? But you're only losing 20% of a portion of your portfolio if you have it set up right. And so we want to make sure you are still taking an appropriate amount of risk because over the long haul, you'll have those gains, right? And so we go by a formula, and this formula, see it, but just when we meet with you one-on-one, we really adjust it based on your own personal goals and needs, right? And it varies, right? And so we call it the prudent investor rule, right? And so you take the age 100, you minus it by your age, and that's how much percentage you should be putting towards growth stocks, right? And again, this just helps us create a framework to make sure you're taking an appropriate amount of risk. Now, we do have a sliding scale with that based on your personal needs, though, right? And so we just want to have a framework, though, because it's easier to operate within frameworks. If you listen to a presentation like this and say you never sit down with us, at least you have a guiding light that you can use. And there's also something that we use for our advisors as a guiding light. And then we build off of that based on the person's unique situation, right? And again, this is not something we just made up. This is something that we have learned through our training, our licensing, and all the wealth management classes that we are forced to take. This is something that's come from that. So, and then just being able to help lots and lots of clients, right? And so that piece was more so for the retirees. This piece is for those that are still working, right? How can we adjust our risk while working in the TSP? I mean, while still working, right? And so just want to give you some slight insight on this, right? So if you go to TSP individual funds, you'll see the risk level of all of the TSP funds, right? And if you look at the bottom, it shows like, and this is just an example. This is G, C, and I, right? And so if you look at the G fund is 1 dot, which is low risk, right? It's low risk because you won't lose any money in the G fund. But if you look at this, when it goes to this 10-year average on the G fund is actually doing pretty good this year. And the reason why it's doing pretty good is because interest rates are higher, right? But that might not stay for a long time, right? But like if you look at the 10-year is at 2.32, right? And so that's the 10-year average, right? And so again, we want to be outpacing inflation. So yeah, it might be safe and it's low risk, but it has increased risk because we're losing buying power. And why buying power is important is because if you were to take $100 into the grocery store last year, you get a lot less groceries than you do now, right? And so, it's just, this is it. If you had put a kid through college 10 years ago, the price is very different than what it is now, right? That's inflation. And so we got to make sure our dollars are growing with the cost of things around us. And so, so the G fund is at low risk. The C fund is at medium risk, which is pretty good because the C fund, as you see, is returning 12% over the last 12 years, a big 26 this year, right? In the last, year to date, and in the last 1 year is the 26, which is good. And this is why you want, this is why you want to have money in this account because you get these big years. Now, last year was 2022 wasn't so great, but 2023 was. So you want to make sure that you're locking in these gains. Now, let me tell you something. So say you, after 2022, right? Let's say 2022 happened, you lost 20%. And then you took all that money and let's to keep the math simple. Let's say you had 100,000. No, you know what? I'm gonna go bigger with y'all because I want y'all all to be TSP millionaires. Let's say you had $1 million in your TSP, right? And then you lost 20%, right? That means you lost 200,000, right? Is that right, Mike? Yeah, that's right? You had $1 million in your TSP. The C fund lost 20% in 2022. So you took all that money and you moved it to the G fund because you're like, I don't want to lose any more money. So I'm just gonna move all my money to the G fund. And so you move 800,000 to the G fund. Now you look at this very next year where the C fund is up 26%. You would have not gotten all those gains back. You would have locked in your losses in the G fund, right? You would have got 4% on your 800,000. You wouldn't have lost no more, but you wouldn't have gained your money back. And this is why you have to have that set it and forget it mindset, because if you try to control it, you could end up like that. And there's no way for you to know. There's just no way for you to know. And so you just want to have that set it and forget it mindset. And then the last fund, we had the I fund. That's the high risk. And the reason why I look at the I fund as the high risk is because, look, you got one good year, but even if you look at the last 10, you only got 4% return, right? So that means that account is very, very volatile, right? If you got 10-year return, you got 10 years is the most aggressive, and you only got 4% return. So there's a lot of losses in there, right? And so you want to, I'm not going to say stay away from it, but I'm just saying look at the risk factor on it versus the C fund, and you make your decision. I mean, if you want to talk about it one-on-one, we can absolutely talk about it, but I don't want to make a blanket recommendation on here because it's all based on your individual preferences, right? Again, the reason why the C fund is so good because we all use these companies, right? And so that also leads me to the life cycle funds, right? And so the life cycle funds We got the L income, and there's a bunch of life cycle funds, but you can only highlight 3 on the site. So life cycle funds gives you the L20, L income. That's for people getting ready to retire, getting ready to receive income from their TSP. L2030, and then L2060. And if you look at this, the further out the date, the more aggressive it is, right? And why is that? Is because they're taking on more risk every year. So let's look at how it works, right? So here's the life cycle 2030. Here's the life cycle 2060, right? If you look at the L2030, the allocation target is 33% in the G, 31 in the C, 7, and then 21 in the I, right? But the main thing here to show you the differentiation, you have 33% in G. And the reason being is because we're getting closer and closer to retirement. Now, when you look at 2060, these people are not close. So there's 0.46% in the G, 0.5 in the F. The rest of it is all equities, right? And equities are the CS and I. CS and I are funds that are stock funds. They're invested in companies, right? Whereas G and F are bond accounts. They're invested in bonds, right? And so going back, the reason why this is at 23% and this one at 15 and this one's at 8 is because there's more G fund the closer you are to retirement versus this one where the G fund is very minimal, right? All right, so that leads me, and I just want to give y'all some quick stuff, but man, my stuff is going all over the place. All right, so here we go. So that leads me, anyway, that leads me to our TSP finish line process. This is for people that are getting ready to retire and need, retirement assistance. This is what we do. We help you, optimize your federal benefits, invest your TSP properly, like we were mentioned, navigate different tax strategies with Roth conversions, etc. Insurance, asset protection planning, we help with that. Building smart income, and then your healthcare and medical needs, right? That's what we do with our TSP finish line process. If anybody wants to sign up for a call, Mike, could you put the link in the chat? Mike could put the link in the chat for those that want to sign up for a call. But if we have any questions, I want to open it up for Q&A now. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And I'll see if you want to speak, just hit the request to speak button. If not, Mike, can you read the questions?
So the first question is from Mary. And Mary's asking, I have a 401k from Fidelity from my previous employer. Would you recommend I move the money to my TSP?
Mary, it just depends. Like, are you getting good returns at that account? Like, how is it going? Do you feel like because like what happens is sometimes previous employers will manage the money well, and sometimes they'll just put it in like a dormant fund, don't manage it at all, and you just don't get hardly any returns. But there are options out there. We could look at that for you if you want to talk about different options, so that you're clear. But that's what matters, like if they're managing it or not. Does that answer your question, Mary? She said yes.
I'm waiting for a reply now.
Okay. But yeah, Mary, if you want to hop on a call, we'll have our team reach out and we can review it for you. Let us know if that will work for you. All right. Any other question?
I don't see any right now.
Let me see.
Any new questions anyway?
All right. Okay. All right. If we don't have any more questions, let me think. So like some of the things that all right, Mary, yeah, we'll talk to you about it for sure. Some of the things that come up for sure are regarding the life insurance. That's one. Like if anybody has the FEGLI option B in here that has never met with our team before, you want to look at that because the FEGLI option B is going to go up in cost every 5 years. And so you want to be able to reduce. You don't want to keep paying those increase in premiums every 5 years, or you could fix the cost. And there's different life insurance policies that are for federal employees that you can use to reduce that cost, lock it in, and then put that extra money towards your TSP, right? So that's a big one that we get a lot of questions about. And you could drop the FEGLI at any point. But if you want to, have a conversation about that, that's a good one. Also, the coverage you have in the government, it doesn't have any real bells and whistles to it. So you want to make sure when you get a life insurance policy that it has a living benefit rider on it. And what a living benefit rider will do is it will help you if you have any major medical issues, right? We had a person who had a cervical cancer. She had a $350,000 policy. She was able to take $115,000 off of that policy to help her with her major medical needs that she had with the cancer, and that paid for income and stuff like that. And so you want to make sure you have a policy that has that on it as well.
So we have some questions coming in now, Will. So the next question we have is from Catalina. She says, okay. I'm a civil service retiree, so 3 years. I guess retired in 3 years ago, and have not touched my TSP. Is it advisable to convert to Roth?
Congratulations, Catalina. That's pretty cool. You retired civil service. I hope you got your 40% and living on the beach somewhere. But when it comes to that, right? When you do a Roth conversion, and today I was doing one with a lady, you have to do it based on whatever your taxable income is, right? And so, because it's all about your tax bracket. So you could do it, but you have to first have a financial plan built out so that you know exactly how much you're converting every year. Because, for example, let's say you have $200,000 in your TSP, right? And you want to convert that over to a Roth, right? You can't convert the whole $200,000 right now, because if you do, that $200,000 will be taxed as income this year, which will take your taxable income. Will take you to the next tax bracket. You'll blow through the next tax bracket, and you end up paying more in taxes than you need to. The right way to do it is to say, okay, and Catalina, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you, Catalina? If you don't mind, you could say like 60 something, mid 60s, if you want to keep it, without saying your age. But what's your age, Catalina? Because it helped me give you the example that you put it in there. Okay, 62. All right, so you're 62. So you got 10 years, right? So let's say you got 200,000 in your TSP. Then we would take let's say your next tax bracket up was, and what I mean by, like, there's different tax brackets, income brackets within these tax brackets, as you all know, right? We would look at that and we'll say, okay, we can convert 25,000 per year, and it'll take us 8 years to convert it over, because we're doing 25,000 per year. But what that does is that keeps you in the same tax bracket that you're already paying taxes in. So it reduces your taxable income rather than blowing your tax bracket for this year out the water, and you end up paying more taxes, right? And so we want to do it in a system. But the only way to do that is by helping you build out a financial plan to keep you in a level tax bracket, right? And so it also helps. It also, if you were to do it and go above your certain tax bracket, it also will affect your Medicare payments. And so we want to make sure we keep all that stuff in line when it comes to your retirement.
All right. So our next question is from Lisa Johnson. When is a good time to put your TSP in the G fund? I plan to retire in 4 years. Should I move it now?
No, wait to at least two years out, and then we could, then wait to 2 years out. 4 years is a little while, but again, it depends on, because you might be retiring in 4, but do you think you need the money in 4, right? So if you're retiring in 4, you might not need the money. You want to make it based on when you need the money, right? And so, because a lot of people are like, all right, now I'm retired, and then we're talking to them like, yeah, but I don't need this money, so it doesn't matter. You get what I'm saying? So you want to make sure you're, it just really comes down to making sure you have a financial plan in place to be able to make decisions like that. Like, you just got to have a financial plan, because if you don't have a financial plan, it's hard to make these strategic plans for yourself, because you don't know, you don't know what your tax situation going to be like. You don't know what happens if you have a major medical issue. You don't know, and so you want to make sure you have that plan built out. But Lisa, to answer your question, without knowing anything about you, I would say wait to 2 years out before you start making it to moving into G, and don't move all of it. Like just a percentage of it, move it over there. Don't move all of it. But yeah, but if you want to sit and talk and we can go through exactly what your numbers will look like, just reach out to us and we'll make sure we get you in the right place so that there's no guessing involved. Same thing with you, Catalina. I know I answered you a lot of questions there, but if you want us to help you do that Roth conversion so you reduce your taxable income, feel free to reach out. We'll make sure we get you squared away. Any other questions?
Mary had a follow-up question. She basically was asking, she said, I have some friends who are only investing in the C fund. What are your thoughts concerning that?
I mean, that's fine as long as they're they're not 2 years out from retirement. A lot of TSP millionaires, the way they got to TSP millionaires is they rode the C fund all the way out. Because again, over the last 10 years is the highest returning account. And so they just took advantage of that. Yep, they took advantage of that. So it's not wrong.
This isn't a question, but it's a question I get a lot. So I'm just gonna go ahead and ask it.
Yeah.
When I retire, can I still invest in my TSP?
Okay. Yeah. When you retire, you can no longer input money into your TSP. If you want to be able to put money in, you have to start at your own personal IRA or Roth IRA. And what most people do when they're retired, they're trying to put money into the Roth account because the Roth account is already taxed. When it comes to your traditional money, you can't put money in there unless it comes from an employer plan anyway. So most people, what they want to do is they want to put money into their Roth TSP when they retire. And so in order to do that, you have to be able to, you have to have an outside account to do that. So yeah, Mike, you can't put anything else in there.
All right. Does anybody have any more questions before we wrap up for tonight?
All right. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this is helpful. We'll share the recording. Thank you all. We'll start doing these more often. Again, Catalina, if you need any assistance, we'll reach out to you. You can reach out to us. Same thing with you, Mary. We'll make sure you get squared away and make sure you're looking at that Fidelity account the right way. But nobody has any questions. I'll see y'all later. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.